Sounds good. I like phone call on the kitchen.
And just like that, we teleported over. We're in the main room.
Geez, Ray, it was better when you weren't here.
Sorry about that.
I'm glad that you did your hair for the event, Ray.
Yes, it's very bouffant.
Good to go, Sharps. He's on mute. I think we're good to go. I'll go ahead and start anyway. Paul, you're maybe a little bit behind with the YouTube live. So tonight, welcome back. Wednesday night, second last episode of the season here. We've got changing things up a little bit tonight, and going to bring on some presenters who are going to talk a little bit. And we've talked a lot about tackle football. Olivia is going to start tonight. She is presently, I think, studying a PhD at University of Western Ontario. Neuroscience. She's going to talk a little bit more about that. That's way, way above what I am here as a high school teacher and an auto mechanic and stuff like that, defensive line coach. So Olivia is going to talk about sort of female flag football hybrid as well, which is something I know that a couple weeks ago I was on an NCCP course, and we were definitely started to talk about. So Olivia, I'm definitely looking forward to you telling us a little bit more about that. And then later we're going to, our second presenter is Amada Ruller out of Saskatchewan. She's Football Canada player and strength and conditioning coach and host of lots of different things. This is her second episode today. I think she's going to be on the internet here, so we'll look forward to hearing from her as well. But first, without further ado, we'll turn it over to Olivia. Take it away.
Awesome. Am I able to see if people have comments or questions as well, just as I go through this?
There is the chat feature, and we will, what we'll do, Olivia, is we'll chime in if we do get some questions that we need, or at any point if you want to stop and ask us as well if we have any.
Awesome. Okay, I love it. And with that, I'm going to go through things fairly briefly and hopefully provide some tips on this kind of athlete centric, which is a term I'm going to coin throughout this presentation, on how you can build programs that integrate not just yourselves as coaches and delivering programming, but also what that looks like when you put the athletes in charge of that. So that's what I mean by athlete centric, and then building or an introduction into contact flag and what that looks like from our league's perspective. So a bit about me. Rick already did a really nice intro for me. So I'm from Mississauga, Ontario. I grew up in the Peel region, meaning that I actually had the opportunity of playing flag football starting in grade 6. It was a part of our curriculum. And then, of course, we had the varsity team at my high school, and that's where I got my first foot into the football world. Only was playing 7v7 flag, which is fairly common across the board here in Canada. But over time, and as I moved through my academic career and moving into university, I started exploring other opportunities to keep playing. And so I went to Western. I've been here since 2014. I've been at Western for a while now. And I joined what was our football program then in 2015. It was formerly known as powder puff football in this league, but we've completely moved away from that term. It's now just football generally, and women's football generally. And we play this hybrid version of the game, which I'll talk about at the end of this presentation. And my work has really started fairly later. So 2015 I was playing, but it was not until 2017 where I started to see that there's a need to build the women's side of programming. Like, how do we get more women in the game? How do we make this game exciting and competitive for athletes? So that's where I'm growing and pushing for the university level, because that's when you start seeing more on the youth side and at the high school side, an achievable goal. Where are they going to take football, and what can they continue doing after high school, for example? So I like to always highlight the pathways in sport and providing that gender equity perspective and what we're seeing on the women's side. And that might influence how you start integrating women into your programs for those who are listening in, and as well, and why you should be supporting the work that women are doing in football, generally speaking. So when we think about keeping girls and young women in the game, what we see after high school is that 62% drop out of sport or any form of physical activity. It's actually quite a large percentage, and this is across Canada. So this is provided by the Canadian Women in Sport Foundation. And let's say they do stay in sport, and of course there's that angle of going the varsity route, or here in Ontario, or professional, and that's about 2%. So it's not a big number. But when we look at here the intramural side of things, those who are 18 to 26 years old that are women, only 26% stay physically active or are a part of a sport. So numbers are still fairly low. Same goes for how we're pushing our athletes into the direction of coaching or sitting on boards, being a part of athletic departments and running and leading those organizations. Again, what I want to highlight are a few things. Is that, one, we need to keep young. I think this extends to both boys and girls staying in the game. And the second component there is that there's more to sport, that there's that professional development, and it's all about how you sell that at different levels, right? You're not in the sport just for playing the game, but also what you can do with it in your real life after. So talking about our league, it's the Ontario Women's Intercollegiate Football Association. And what we do is provide that experience to play football. It's all student athlete run. And it includes all of these great programs across the province. And I love to lay it out, because then you can kind of see the growth of the game and how many women's teams exist currently. And of course, all programs are somewhat within their different departments under the institutions. And look at these numbers. This is the number of athletes per university. They're pretty high. We have over 400 athletes competing right now. And my background is ensuring that they have a positive experience throughout all of this, and delivering programming to build more women's football athletes, as well as career and leadership development throughout their academic career. So who makes up our league? And again, I highlighted the number of athletes we have, but here are the actual teams. You can visualize the number of girls that are getting out there and competing. And this tends to grow from year to year. And back in 2020, before the pandemic hit, we actually managed to host 3 tournaments, and I'll talk about our game in a second. Really awesome just to see the number of faces that are involved in this program. And honestly, this league wouldn't be where it is today without those who want to keep the game going and keep those programs running at each institution. That kind of is an overview of the league in a sense that, okay, here's the demand. How do we make it so that it's a rewarding experience? And I just wanted to highlight 4 key points from my experiences building this league. One being, how are we recruiting and bringing in new athletes from year to year? And what can that look like from your end as a coach, for example? Next is that retainment piece. So athlete centric. So giving the athletes control over the programming that they're a part of. How do you do that? How do you make it so that they're building additional skills on top of just the training? Because there's so much to it. And if they feel more connected and invested in the game that they're playing, by delivering programming or even supporting their own teammates, that really creates a positive experience and builds the overall cohesiveness of any team. Another thing I want to highlight is how to build these programs, how to start from scratch. How do you get the funding and that professional development piece in there so that things can continue from year to year? And then lastly, I want to provide that introduction into our game and how we've been able to integrate contact flag and keep that going from year to year and the benefits of it and how it encourages all those elements of tackle, but to a certain extent where you're replacing the tackling with the flagging. The recruitment, let me just give you an example. So when we're looking at the university lens and you're thinking about where you're getting a lot of your athletes from, for girls in the game and coming from high schools, there's about 8 athletic associations across Ontario that offer flag football or touch football as a potential sporting experience. So I'm obviously using Ontario an example. Some other provinces are a bit better with this in terms of what they have to offer at high school level, but it definitely varies across the country. But here in Ontario, we have 8. And of those 8, you can see the number of teams, which I put up there next to each association, that have a varsity or even a junior high school flag football team. And that means we have a huge resource to tap into to bring in new athletes, especially at the university level. So how do we target this group? And this can apply to any program. And I've kind of broken it down for you that if you're thinking of it at the youth or high school level, what that looks like. And what's key is making your program stand out. So if you are a coach that is getting a team going to compete locally, what about your program makes it special? And for us, when I'm providing that lens from our league, a big thing that we, at least as the president at Western, is that we're trying to get the best equipment possible. And equipment is minimal, but I mean, gear, you want to look good to feel good out on the field, and doing that at reduced costs. And how do we remove that barrier of some of the costs to either have that gear or get out on the field to participate in as many tournaments as possible? Those resources will make your program stand out. And I'll talk about ways in which you can help with sponsorship and funding, and hopefully that'll help anyone who's running their own programs. Another thing you always want to make stand out is your staff, your coaches. What about them is unique and makes your program a step ahead versus others? So even your own experiences, how do you sell that? How do you recruit your athletes so that they can believe in you as a coach? And that's a huge component, because what we're working with at Western are a bunch of student volunteers. So what about our student volunteers make them suitable coaches for our athletes? How do our women athletes believe they're in the right hands? So of course that comes with just being a part of the league for a number of years. And that's what we have. We have a lot of coaches that return from year to year. So just the number of years you've been coaching is a great start. A lot of them tend to be OUA men's football athletes that coach our program. So what successes have you had as an athlete, and how might that be something you promote to your own who are trying to join your team or become a part of your program? And then of course, the next component there is what can any athlete coming through your program take away from that? So if they are going to play 18U, 17U, or they're going to move into the university lens, if they're going to be a part of your program, what opportunities are you going to open up? If they're going to go pro, okay, how are you going to promote that athlete when they're ready to go that direction? But if that's not the case, then what about the career development piece where they're not going to be playing for the rest of their lives, right? How are you building the skill sets so that they can then move into any career after? Another thing, again, is who are you appealing to? So if you're working at the youth level, you're trying to get parents on board. And how do you integrate parents into your programs? How do they feel like they're a part of it? If you're working at the high school level, it's again, you're promoting one to parents and one to athletes. Where can they play and continue playing after? But also, can that help me get there through scholarship, money? That's what I love to highlight. If you're going into the university realm to play your sport, where can you take advantage of sponsorship, of scholarship? And that's kind of what has allowed me to attend university throughout my career because of sport. I put that down as a big leadership component of what I've done throughout the years. And I've been able to go through school and including my PhD through a full ride scholarship. So those kind of things are really important. And of course, they got to be doing well in school and whichever route they want to go. And then at the college and university level, you're actually appealing to the individual. For women athletes, it's like playing the game is one thing. Introducing them to football is usually later in their career. And for them to fall in love in the game, that takes some time. But if you can sell things like fitness, getting them into shape, that's a huge selling point because not only are they going to learn a game and have a kind of community, they're also going to get that physical output that many women do look for in the game. And then, of course, career development. So where are they going to take what they've learned and apply it after? And then the last thing, and I think some coaches, especially those who have been in the game for a while, are getting more familiar with the tech aspect of things. So using social media, being on Twitter, being on Instagram, and how that is actually super effective at not just promoting yourself as a coach, but promoting your athletes and the programs that you have to offer. And that's something that with our league, we tend to do for our teams because not all teams will be running their own social media accounts. So we do that. We showcase women in the game, etc. So how do we target this group? Some ideas that I love to share from what I've been doing over the years might be helpful for each of you. So for Western's team, we do this mentorship type program within the team. So we have our veteran athletes that are often paired up or teamed up with someone new and a rookie coming in. So establishing those connections within a team early that is beyond the game, but also understanding that there's a team dynamic component to it, knowing the ins and out of a new environment. How are you doing that for your athletes? And these are just kind of those unique ways of going about it. Creating resources and providing workshops. So some big ones include performance nutrition. So we have this available on our website if anyone ever is interested in using it. But how do you eat to train and how do you recover after training with the way you eat? And that's actually changes the level of the game. So lots of sayings that were used in that performance workshops, like before you go, you got to get the cho, meaning the carbs and the water. Before, once you're done, you got to get the chop, those carbs, that water, and the protein. So making sure that you know how to find that balance and making these resources available for your athletes so that they're excelling beyond just the game itself. Another one is mental health in sport. I think even on the men's side, that isn't spoken to as much, and it's become more and more important because, of course, mental performance is just as good as the physical. They go hand in hand. So making sure that your athletes have the right resources for that, even at the young level. Who can they go to? Who can they talk to about what's going on beyond just the field? So what I always say is, I hate when coaches say, forget what's happening out in the real world. Let's forget what you went through today and just focus on the field and just get your head into the game. That's not the reality of things. If you think of equity, diversity, inclusion in sport, a lot of athletes tend to go through a lot more than what they show. And that can be personal experiences, whatnot. And it's hard to just kind of forget that. And there's a lot of layers to it. So you have to think about ways to support athletes that come from those different backgrounds because it will affect their output on the field. And I think that's sometimes forgotten or ignored, hence why I highlight why I hate that saying in a sense, because they can't just forget. So what is one athlete going through versus another? And I always like to give the example of a lot of athletes have to pay for school. So they're working full time, then they're going through school full time, and then they have their own at-home things going on, and they're expected to forget all of that and perform to the best of their abilities on the field. But that's a lot. It's a lot for one person, and sometimes they need that additional support to be able to excel. So being able to provide resources for that is important, even if you're just running an individual team. You got to think about your athletes in that sense. Another component is, especially in a pandemic, and Amanda's going to go through this, so I won't talk about it in details, but keeping those joints, keeping your body protected by training the right way. Of course, it's important, especially returning to sport. We don't want to be jumping back into full games, and then there goes the ACL. I've torn mine, and I never want to go through that again. So just those kind of things is why we want to protect. And even just doing non-weight related workouts to get that functional movement in, super important. And that's what we've been offering our athletes during this time. Things they can do at home, things they can do online, just to at least keep those movements there, that flexibility there, balance before returning into full training and sport. Adding on to this is, how do you come up with unique ways to connect with your athletes? And I say leverage anything within your area locally. So what our league has done to recruit, for example, is partner, of course, with different organizations like the Argos. They're a great resource that, one, on the women's lens, are trying to get a bigger fan base. So if you can bring more women into the game, that sells more tickets. But two, they can also provide us with a lot of resources and training to help recruit and bring in high schools in the local Toronto area to come onto their fields, try out the game with our athletes, and then learn about that university experience. So that's what we hosted. And I like to provide these kind of examples so you can think uniquely about how you bring in new athletes and you build your own program. So we did this with the Toronto Argos. We made it a virtual event because, of course, last year was a bit different for everyone. We included an interactive film review, much like these coaching sessions, but now with the athletes reviewing tape, and then learning about programs and how to get there. That's a big component. How do you keep going in the game? And what I want to say as big takeaways is to reach out to local organizations that might have these resources you can pull into and take advantage of. Don't ever hesitate on that, even if they are bigger names. And like I say, pinpoint things that are already available. So field space, if that's something you're paying for to rent out to use, can you find a group that has access to that or runs the field? Can you reach out to them about providing that as a free opportunity for your athletes? For example, the Argos have a ton of film that they were able to break down and showcase to our athletes so they can understand the game better. Simple things like that, which requires no money on that organization's end. So retainment. And here's the athlete-centric component. What I like to highlight is that sometimes it's nice to be able to see your work come to life. So at Western's program, we have a team president, we have a team VP, and we have individual members who are responsible for things to help manage and run the team, which often a coach tends to do that completely. But and if we're not thinking at the university level where you have a bunch of other staff, but even at the high school level, how can you get your own athletes to start taking on these leadership responsibilities to better the programming within your own team without it being all on you, right? And I think sometimes that can be overlooked because the capabilities of youth are huge. And of course, the university level, they're already even a step further. Take advantage of that. And I love highlighting how we have members in our own team that do those things along with the head coach, but who's the ones promoting us on social media? Sometimes your own athletes can do that better than yourself. So get them involved in that process. If you have someone who can maybe go out and do the sponsorship running around for you and support that work, give that responsibility to an athlete, and they can get some of their buddies to go out and reach out to different programs and teams. And that's what I like to highlight. It's a great way to build leadership skills. And if it's not the athletes and you're working with groups that are even younger, involve the parents. Like, get them to work with their kids to get those same outputs. And you'll have that same leadership effect and more control of the athletes and seeing how their development takes. Another example is our events coordinator to build more team cohesiveness literally reached out to, for example, a bowling alley near Western and said, hey, can we come out and use your space so that we can have a social? Small things like that. And oftentimes they'll be like, okay, fine, you can have this amount of food for free if you share this on social media 2 times throughout the night or 3 times throughout the night. And it's just taking advantage of those local groups and local organizations that can build your own programs and the experiences within your programs. Integrating professional development can be hard. As a coach, there's only so much you can do. Again, if you have that athlete-centric team helping you out, they can maybe set these things up for you. For us, some unique things that we've done is host panels and talks very similar to what is happening right now for our own athletes so that they can learn about going into the world of coaching or football operations or into communications around sport. And it's an awesome way to say, hey, if you can go beyond the game that you're playing, and that's not what defines you. And I think, especially at the university level, for a lot of athletes, when they leave the game and have to start thinking about other things after that, they're like, oh my goodness, football was such a big part of me. How do I separate that identity for who I am now and where my career is going to go? And some go into coaching to keep the game in their lives as well, but some don't. And having that transition and making that a bit smoother for athletes will really help with the kind of that mental health component and staying motivated after. So ways you can do this, like I said, a panel is a really great one. Doing resume workshops, get someone that you know who can help build resumes with your athletes, sit down, even at the high school and university level. How can you write out your football experiences in a way that sounds appealing to an employer? In youth groups, do challenges and on top of practices to help kind of build the different skills, the life skills, the communication skills, etc., into practice. And I'm just going to highlight a panel that we hosted. So this was our Women in Football Careers Weekend. It was very, very much inspired by what the NFL has hosted in the past. And we had 3 panels that happened throughout the weekend where our athletes could ask questions directly and hear more about how to prepare for a career in communications or in coaching staff or in football operations. Also, all of these workshops are available online. So if anyone wants to share it and watch it themselves, you're welcome to. I can share that in the links as well. And yeah, and that there's more opportunity after the game ends is a big component. And it was nice because we had representation all the way from the NFL to the CFL in this event. So a big one is how to find funding opportunities. Even if you're an individual team, what does that look like? Where do you start? How do you go about it? And I'll kind of break down a little bit of a sponsorship sheet that I put together in the past so people can get an idea of the language, how to navigate that, and who to reach out to. So a big thing in creating your sponsorship letter and reaching out to groups is, what is the goal of your program and does it impact? How many kids do you have involved in it? How many athletes are a part of that program? Do you have an online presence? Again, I had mentioned that's so big now. If you have an online presence and a group wants to sponsor you, you now have somewhere to showcase your athletes and with that branding on there as well. Offer tiered sponsorship. So I'll highlight that too, where it can be anywhere from equipment items or gift cards that can just be given from the organization or group all the way up to monetary donations. And then provide a breakdown of what you can offer at each tier. So if someone is going to give you equipment or gift cards, where will their brand go? Will it go on a jersey? Will it go on a backpack? Will it be on just social media? Breaking it down that way. And groups you can reach out to, of course. I always say local businesses because they're trying to give back to that region. So that's a big one. And if they are seeing promotions in that region mostly, they know that whoever is going to see their brand will then be able to actually go to their business because it's local. Food places are always great for hosting things like team banquets. Some people just totally miss that, hey, they'll give us a discount on food if we host a banquet at their restaurant or something, or host it at a social. Another big one are car companies, brewing companies, banks. Banks usually have a budget and you should be reaching out around like the September mark before they're allocating money for the upcoming fiscal year, about $500 to $1,000 donation. They often have money budgeted aside to help local groups. Other ones are Sport Check, usually reviews every other week any groups who come in asking for items or support. And you can actually ask them to consider you with that. And they just need a 1-pager as to who your group is. And they usually give out either gift cards, equipment, etc., to help with your programs. Jumpstart has some really good ones out right now. If you're looking at building kind of more coaches, the Canadian Association of Coaches offer, the Coaches Association of Ontario, for example, will cover up to 70% of your NCCP training if it's multi-sport. Not many people know this exists, and I think it should be promoted across the board. But if you're trying to excel and increase in the level of your coaching, that's available. If you're going to support women in sport, there is so much money in that area right now that is looking to give it out just to build more women's program, get more women in the game, whether it be football or not. And don't be afraid to crowdfund. Start a GoFundMe if you need to. They do take a small percent when you do a GoFundMe, but at least you can have some money to apply back to your programs, whether that be from parents putting money in or local communities. And Western's team has gone up to $2,000, and it helps when local stations will take it up too, and we end up on CBC London in the morning, because that also helps with promotion. So before I move into the game, I'll just kind of give a highlight of my plays of what something I've put together before. So I always like to set up a sponsorship letter with a letter that is personal, directed to the individual, so that they have an idea of why we want their support. This was for an insurance company, for example, describing kind of the obstacles we face and why we need the money support and where it will go. And this is what I was talking about earlier. Define here exactly where any support comes from and what you can do on your end. So this is the outcome. We'll mention you and tag you on social media at all times. We'll put you on our website. And as we move up in the different tiers, so I did bronze, silver, gold, I'll put you on gear. Team will attend your events and help as volunteers at your events, depending on the organization or company. And then the last one, when the money is a bit higher to support our team, is wearing their logo, including them on any major events that we host. So Western hosts a tournament every year, putting their brand up, allowing them to set up a table, a booth, etc. So that's what I just like to highlight there. Anyway, so that's enough talking about building programs. I'm going to talk about the game. I won't get into the details too much because I think it's fairly straightforward in a sense. So in our version of contact flag here with the women's programs, and I put some pictures to highlight what the offensive line looks like and then how that transitions into the flagging for skilled players. We play 11-a-side football, and we set it up along the width of a Canadian-sized football field. So it's a fairly small field, and then we wish it was bigger. We can go full size. And if anyone is thinking of integrating this into a practice where they're eliminating the tackle for the time being with the pandemic, I would just suggest going full field. It's all the same. We wish we could go full field, but it's just a matter of resources. So by having two fields present, we can host a whole tournament in a couple days rather than kind of those one games at a time. But with how it works is that the 11-a-side football incorporates the offensive and defensive line. I'll get into those details in a second, where they're making the contact, but any skilled position on the offense or defense is wearing flags. So you're eliminating the the tackling and replacing it with flagging instead. With our version, we get rid of the kickoff and kick return because, again, there's a big safety element there. So instead, we just start at, for example, the 10-yard line, move up field. And there's a whole bunch of other layers there, but you can incorporate kicking and everything else the same for that field goal or 1-point convert. And because we are playing 11-a-side, we follow much of what kind of the NFL puts together here in terms of a set. So you could see here, we have the tight end involved instead of other positions that you see with the CFL games. So feel free to adapt anything that I will chat about very briefly in terms of our playbook at Western and how we've kind of included the same elements of a tackle game, but without the tackling, you can get similar things in there. So a lot of the questions come around the blocking rules. So here's just a breakdown of just general rules on how a line is set up, that each side of the line is protected in some capacity with another receiver on the line. So max of 7. We work in a way that the line isn't eligible to catch a ball. It's fairly similar to CFL rules. You have to be off the 1 yard line. One thing we don't include in this game is like moving linesmen across, so any pull blocking, nothing like that, just because of safety reasons. We do play in the snow. I don't know if many are aware of that, and that adds a whole other element of challenge. So we try to keep things simple within the square of the body. When the ball is off, you disengage from your blocking. You can actually block downfield. So I'll show some plays as to what that looks like. And I describe here that what the contact blocking includes. So between the shoulder and the waist. So you're still teaching the similar elements of engaging on the line. It's just now you're getting rid of kind of the bigger movements that push athletes to the ground than you would if you were able to tackle. And you can rush the same way. You have some of the same exact kind of gaps that you're working with, running between gaps. And I'll show some examples of plays so you can see that as well. Of course, I got to showcase our athletes here. We got a big team at Western. There's 60 girls on our program. Here's kind of how we set up on the defense and offensive end. I put their last names on, got to represent. And again, the defensive line can set up however they wish, but this is usually our kind of base set. And then on the D here, we have a fullback and a running back as well incorporated in there, and kicking personnel too. Okay. So, and just to kind of wrap up, I know my time's coming to an end, and I wish I had more film, but unfortunately, our game isn't recorded as much as I would like. So I'm kind of going to give you an overview of what we put together. And I wish I was at the I knew Quick Pro Draw existed before, but we do the classic PowerPoint and drawing everything by hand to a whole, without those base kind of plays or routes lined up for us. So making these is literally like a week marathon. But this is kind of, because we have wristbands and we're able to put everything on for us, and it is that flag game, we basically put kind of the plays that are memorized, our audibles, and just the different spots, and then incorporate some of the concepts that you see with the tackle game. But with our game, and I'll zoom in on these a bit more, but I just like to show kind of a general playbook. I can't give away all the goods for Western, but that's just how we work. All of our girls have to study this over the Christmas break, heading into the season in the new year. So we have like 40 something plays. I think it's a bit out of hand, so we might cut that down in the future. But we have, of course, have all of our different sets. So some of these might be familiar concepts already for some. The bronze, we give our things our own names. So here's for us sixes, so kind of where our RB is set up. Gunners, so trips, so how we have things set up on the right. We still have the line. I just am really trying to highlight how similar a lot of the concepts are moving into the contact flag game when it's 11v11. I know you have to integrate the Canadian rules and think of it that way, but that's examples. When we have the RB and I and lined up behind the quarterback. When we have two receivers, a kind of a balanced set. We come up with weird names, so ignore those if anyone's wondering where we come up with this. MT classic, where the RB will move out of the backfield, run downfield, and kind of I'll showcase some of my more favorite plays, which is Portland, usually almost always open with the tight end hitting the out there. Again, I'm only giving an offensive lens because that is my realm. I cannot talk to the defensive side of things, but you can apply things, I assume, similarly to any kind of defensive concept in the tackle game. And again, we have a tight end in 11v11, but again, using very similar concepts. QBs learn their reads. They practice things similarly. In a practice, for example, we do skelly like any other practice would run. We move people, move out the line and the running backs, and just do inside pass. So we get kind of all the similar elements of the tackle game, but without that tackling component, and you're only seeing the contact on the line. Some very simple run concepts as well. Our line is really great at knowing how to open up these holes in our gaps. So we will have sometimes a fullback run in there, clear up some space because you can block, so can get physical. We push athletes out of the way, and then our running back usually gets pretty far downfield. Just let me know if I'm ever going through these too quick. We use motions again because we create this interesting hybrid of both the CFL and NFL rules. We can move from the back of the field as well before hitting the line, as long as 7 are set. And I'm happy to share a rule book if anyone would like it in more detail, but this is just a very high level overview of some of the play concepts that we'll incorporate. I'll kind of leave it at that for now, but I'm happy to answer any questions or just chat. So yeah, and I can go through these plays more if anyone else is curious.
That's awesome. Thanks, Olivia. Any questions from anybody on the call?
Do you have a fee that you charge the kids to play?
Yeah, so it's all pay to play, right? And how we do that is we have kind of a set standard cost, but when we start factoring funding and all the other monies as well, that cost we try to reduce in as many ways as possible. So things that are a set cost, attending tournaments, and just kind of the administrative work.
What would be the cost, say, for the kids?
So for our newbies coming in, it's at least $20. $120. I wish it was $20. $120 to play for a full season. That comes with a backpack, 2 jerseys, a sweater, and a jacket. So I can talk about kind of the connections I've made. And if you ever want to set up those kind of clothing areas as well, I can set that up with anyone who's interested. It's with Kahunaverse, so many might be familiar, but they've given us some really great deals on getting that cost low. And then tournament costs are in there. And then field space time if it's ever charged to us, but it hasn't been in the past. Returning athletes where they don't need to buy new jerseys, it's about $50 for the season.
One thing I saw one school do that I thought was really good, I tried to do it, was, we had a program, like a program that we would give out at games. And within that program was, the rosters and all that stuff that you would normally see. And then there'd be a page with all the sponsors. And so what this school did, I think it was St. Francis Xavier, was they told each kid, if you could bring in 2 or 3 sponsors for the program, you would have your fee waived. And so, a lot of kids were going home in the summer and, they would approach their employer and say, look, this is what I'm doing. I'm playing on the team. I could, you could really help us out here. And I never was able to get it implemented, but I know I believe it was St. Vex, it was very strong. And, it went a long way in terms of, helping with that, because that's always a big deal. The funding aspect of things. And, our cost was, we had, I know a lot of university teams, U Sports, they're charging their kids like $400 or $500. And that's a big thing for kids. And anyway, I just thought I'd throw that out at you.
Yeah, and some schools can navigate things differently at the university level. So our Western program, for example, which is sometimes a good thing, isn't under our institution. So there's a number of layers to get through before a team is recognized by an institution.
Yeah.
But because of that, we actually can get away with a lot more cheaper avenues, and we can get more sponsorship in different senses. Some things I like to highlight is even just asking the kids if their parents are willing to sponsor.
Sure. Yeah.
That's always the case. There's usually one who will provide an amount. Crowdfunding or keeping a spot open to just submit any dollar amounts that people are willing to donate. Obviously, it helps if, like, for example, a brewing company, I don't know how that'll work with the high school level, but amongst parents, if you buy their alcohol, they'll often do a kickback. So keep your receipts, show us your receipts, and we'll give you 10% of that dollar amount of alcohol in their brand that you bought to give back to your programs. So you can find those a lot too.
I won't keep you, but the other thing too that I always felt was really important, and you brought it up, was, what, kids are wondering, what's my future? And, the one thing I felt was really important, I thought we really shortchanged kids, was we never really prepared them for different things that they had to do in the business world, like how to prepare for an interview. And there was certain faculties, like the business faculty at my school was really good at this, but other faculties were not. I saw many kids get a degree, a high level degree, and then the next thing that they're doing, and not to degrade it, but they were basically just acting as fitness trainers afterwards. And because that's all they knew, really. I mean, they had a degree in, a high level sociology degree or psychology degree, but they didn't know how to use it. And anyway, the one school I visited, which was really good, was, they would bring the alumni on campus, and they outfitted each kid with their own little business card. And so there would be, 100 alumni there, and these kids were in the room with them, and they would mingle with them and, present their card. This is what I'm interested in. And this was I have to say, it was a very high level US school, but still it was, I just felt that was a big, big thing. You touched on it, was just being able to reach the kids that aren't going to be pros, and that have to move on, and they're so valuable to your program, and yet they feel like their future is, it's questionable.
And I think that's a really unique way of going about it. And you can even think about that with your high school athletes, is like career fairs or that resume workshop, setting that up, building those things, and being able to walk up to someone and present that resume and say, hey, this is why I'm interested in your place. This is why I'm going to try that out, and how to sell it. Because sometimes it's even just writing it out on paper is hard sometimes. So,
Olivia, maybe talk a little bit about your OFA affiliation as well.
Yeah, I wish I had big news to give just yet, but we're working on that right now. So our league is currently pursuing the associate membership route. So maybe not members exactly. Again, for women's sport and with football, and even at the Football Canada level, we don't really know the dollar amounts that we put in, and if that's going back to women's programming specifically, right? That's a big question. There's so much on the men's side, but I don't even know if we were to give a dollar amount to a group, where is that going on the women's side? So we're, of course, being as cautious as we can and figuring out what's the best route. So our affiliation is looking at that associate route. And what that includes is a lot of support back into building these women's programs. And we sit now on multiple committees: Football Canada's Diversity Task Force, Ontario Football's Female Football Development Committee, their non-contact committee. We're there, we're providing our input and feedback, and that's how we're able to set up our affiliation, and hopefully we'll continue that in the future. Yeah.
Do you get much help from the men's team at Western? What's that like?
Good question. I think that relationship might start to build a bit more soon. But in the past, it's always been just some really great students, not on the men's team, that have come out and helped coach us. And of course, if anyone's listening and wants to be a community coach and help coach our women's program, love to take you on here in London, Ontario. But yeah, it's historically with other schools, it tends to be their men's OUA guys coming in coaching, because this is like perfect world to keep playing the game, even though they're out of season. So that's why. And we play in March. So they come in and they help coach and they build up our athletes, and then they get a bunch of training in, and then a lot of them go off to teachers college, and now they can take what they've learned and apply it there. So.
Yeah. I mean, I know Western, for instance, and I don't know if you're this sophisticated in terms of, no. And when I say that, I mean, do you use, you practice? Do you use cameras at practice?
Our phone cameras. To the best that we can. We'll take it.
And I'm going to put Greg Marshall on the spot here. And you could tell him I said this, but they've got 3 big league cameras there. You ought to go knock on his door and see if you could, borrow them in March, because they're probably, sitting on the shelf at that time.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah, I know. Film is like the next big thing for our league moving into the new year. I do have some very crappy videos that I'm happy to share if anyone would like to see them. But yeah, I can honestly. Is it okay if I just show one?
Yeah, absolutely. Go for it.
I'm sure I had. Oh, I had it open a second ago. 1 second. Here we go. My roommate is here too, and she's hiding, but she's also plays on the team. And I'm gonna show that video of her catching a touchdown. Let's see if I have it.
I did take a quick look at the depth chart. Who was the quarterback that threw that touchdown?
Oh, it may have been me, but no bias there. Oh no, it's not on here. Okay, let's see. Okay, I don't have that video right now, but I'll show this one. Oh, I wish it was bigger. Perfect world. It's not there yet, but let me just pause that and share my desktop. Okay, and then optimize for video clip. So hopefully this will work. So again, you can see here, girls lined up on the line. Why are you buffering on me? Let's hope this goes away. Our receivers are coming out of the backfield. They're running in motion. It looks like some of these girls might be blitzing. Fairly fast game, usually pretty physical. Something as simple as that is usually what you often see in our game. Some other good ones. Let's see if I have a few more. Again, all great photo videos on the phone. Out leg. Again, is a quick video, but just an example of what we do. Here's another good one with the tight end hitting her on her out. See if I can zoom in on that. That's awful quality. This is in the snow. Again. That's just an idea of the energy, the vibe.
Who threw that ball? Oh God.
Yeah, that was me. So here's another one if you want to just see it for fun. Me getting like destroyed by a few players that we play on the house, so not the best quality.
Look, Riley! Go get that.
Super simple concepts. Yeah. And I'll leave that. I wish I had a good one of a run, but let's see what it looks like.
Yeah, I was gonna say you had that ISO play drawn up, and I saw you can only use your hands. That's got to be tough running that with snow on the ground.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So the body control to be able to slow yourself up and only come with your hands, not throw a shoulder in it.
And I'm not gonna lie, the lines do get blurred sometimes. So between the flagging and the tackling can be iffy, but we do our best.
No, but there was no officials on the field, right?
There are. We have student volunteers who are officials. Again, I wish we had more resources, more money, but we train them up as best as we can, and they're the ones who are blowing the whistle, making the calls. But yeah, so those are the ones that are keeping the games in check. Again, tends to be the football guys. They know their game pretty well. It's just a matter of being able to see it all. That's a whole other story when there's a few elbows on the line. It always comes in there, a little throat punch that no one wants to get, but it's fun. Everyone loves it.
Well, it was impressive to see just like when you start putting the numbers up of how many players are actually participating, like even your roster alone being, you said 60.
Yeah.
So
I mean, what we do is try to emulate kind of what we've seen on the men's side, and we all had a few coaches that were on the men's program. So how we run on a field is that we have kind of our set line and a lot of girls that are cycling in, because we play 3 games in one day and then a bunch of playoff games in the next day. And if you're hitting on the line constantly, or you're running upfield on the snow, your hip flexors, your butt cheeks are sore the next day. So you have to keep cycling in. And usually we have them ready to go 2 plays, cycle in someone new. They're calling in what the new play is from the line. We're set up and ready to go. It's really good stuff.
Does the same quarterback stay in the whole time?
If we go up a lot, quarterback might be removed. I mean, I'm not going to lie that our team is fairly solid on the Western end. So to brag, we were 18-0 ending off our season last year. We hadn't lost one. So, and for example, when I was showing games from the McMaster tournament, it was a good one. I had over like 14 touchdowns in the 6 games that we played. So it's a lot of football, but yeah, just a slight brag there, and lots of touchdowns for some of our athletes as well.
That's awesome. Well, thanks for putting together that presentation. That was very informative.
Olivia, you ask Sharps who Tom Brady's backup is and see if he knows, right? Like, yeah.
Oh goodness.
He just threw a pass to the moon, so he can throw it to anybody apparently.
Olivia, I'm going to be in touch with you about that 70% off on the. That's one of my roles here with the Peterborough football is the sort of organizing coaches and stuff. So yeah, that's definitely something we'll be in touch with. So.
Oh, love it. Yeah, reach out.
And just to give everybody a little feedback here, I'm an old man who tries to get up with technology. I've had Twitter. At one point, they shut my account down because I never used it. They thought I was a robot. And Olivia became, I think, my 6th follow, and Paul was my 7th. And so, yeah, every day now I get a tweet from Olivia, or it pops up, not to me, but I get a notification. So I check that now, and I've actually started to try to move in. But yeah, I'm more with Amanda. I'm into the Instagram world. That's me. So.
Hey, both are great. Twitter's the spot to get that like sponsorship in that like network with the bigger names, and then Instagram is how you get the athletes. That's what I usually find.
Oh, okay. Well, see, there you go. I don't even want to say I'm more or less just a Facebook person, but I'm pretty old, so.
You're still on MySpace. What are you talking about?
Yeah, exactly. I'm still trying to figure out how to attach something on an email.
Olivia, I put something in the chat there. I don't know if you saw it, but if you're looking for sponsorships and funding, don't forget community service organizations. They're in just about every community, and they look for teams to sponsor and give funding to different community groups. So put the touch on them.
Yeah, actually, I think the Rotary group was going to actually be at our championship cooking up some barbecue for anyone coming out to the game. So they're always a great resource. I totally forgot about them, but that's something we'll reach out to in the new year.
Yeah, Kin Canada, I'm a member of them, and it's Kinsman and Connect clubs. So they're in a lot of communities, and like I say, that's what they do.
Oh, I love that. Okay, thank you for so much. It's super helpful.
You're welcome.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Olivia.
Olivia, I just wanted to say thank you for all you do for women in football and sports. I think it's amazing, and it's super inspiring to see that, because I'm just so excited. I mean, when I wanted to play football almost like 8 years ago now, when I first started, there was nothing like this. So that's really cool.
That's the goal.
And we've got, Paul and I've got Olivia's information. So anybody, we've got most of our familiar people on the call. If you're interested to find out more about Olivia, let Paul or I know, and we can definitely set up something here. And as I say, if there's anything that comes to you after the fact, I know Jason's on the call. He's one of our new organizers of the Flag League in Peterborough that they've just recently started as well. So we might have some more questions, Olivia, and maybe we could even get it together and have an exhibition game one time, and that would be cool for the kids to see just how fast that game was, right? It's looked pretty fast and pretty physical. So
I'm going to add a quick thing in there. In London, there's no opportunity to play football for the girls' end, so we're literally going to be competing with the high school flag programs and playing that way as well. So always down to show some showcasing of the game.
And Olivia, check the chat there. A couple, Richie Hall and Gabe Robinson both put just a couple good jobs in there as well. So definitely hang around, listen to what Amanda's got to say. As I say, it's kind of interesting. I forget now how many weeks ago it was. A couple of months ago, I was we're working from home here, and every day I throw on Rod Peterson at lunch, and well, it's lunchtime here in Ontario, and Amanda was a co-host when Rod was on a week off, and then a couple days later, all of a sudden something pops up, and I think it came through Rod's Facebook feed and says Amanda Ruller wants to coach in the CFL, and I just literally reached out Instagram wise, and I messaged and I said, hey, we got this Wednesday night thing going. She's like, okay, whatever. And then Paul and I were talking. He said, Amanda just liked it on or joined on Facebook. And I said, that's because I told her about what we're doing. And then I mentioned Craig Smith's name, and right. And it's so funny how small a world this football is. And so, yeah, I've been following Amanda now and on Instagram for a month or so, and we've been messaging back and forth. And it's pretty cool that we've actually had the opportunity to get her and Olivia both on. And so, Amanda, I know a little bit about your past, but I kind of want you to sort of talk a little bit more about it. I know Football Canada and strength and conditioning and doing a lot of rugby training and cross training and different stuff in Saskatchewan, but we'll turn it over to you and you tell us about yourself and then kind of strength and conditioning stuff.
Awesome. Yeah, let me share my screen and get going here because I have a little bit. I'll explain who I am in my presentation today. There we go. Let's open that up a bit bigger. Okay. So my name is Amanda Ruller. I'm a sports performance coach. I have my CSCS, which is my Certified Strength and Conditioning Specialist, and I'm a Certified Exercise Physiologist. So when I say sports performance coach, everything under that umbrella is I'm a sprint speed specialist. I was on the University of Regina track team, as well as the soccer team. I got to participate in Olympic trials for the 100 meter and 200 meter for 2 trials in a row. So I was in track and field for almost around 10 years. I'm on Team Saskatchewan Olympic lifting, and I'm actually the record holder for snatch and clean and jerk within my province in the 55 kilogram weight class. That's just a picture of me lifting weights right there at nationals. I played on Team Canada Football Worlds in the 2017. So that's just a picture of me down there. So I actually played corner for that. And I actually played in the Legends Football League in the States. I played running back. So lots of speed and power sports for me. I was actually on Team Canada bobsled and skeleton once I graduated university. So another speed and power sport, which was so much fun to participate in. And I had a really good time. University track and field athlete, I kind of mentioned that as well. I was actually the first female to be on the University of Regina Rams football staff as their sprint speed specialist. So I worked with the different groups about their sprint speed, their agility, what we can do to strengthen these athletes overall to make them better contenders for the season coming up. And now because of the pandemic, I had to kind of dial back and I was on my own quite a bit. But because of that, I got to work with tons of CFL athletes getting ready for the season. I'm so excited they announced it coming up. So I've kind of done private contracting for CFL athletes. I still work with tons of Rams athletes in Regina here. I do online training as well. I work with Rugby Canada. I work with hockey athletes as well. And the SAS Junior Hockey League athletes, everything that encompasses speed and power. And I also teach Olympic lifting. So I got all of that under my umbrella, and I was a little bit of sports broadcasting as I did some for the Riders. I was their in-game host for 2017. And lacrosse, I also coach lacrosse speed training, and I'm the Saskatchewan Rush in-game host. So that's a lot of stuff. So my goal for today is to actually give you guys more of an opportunity to put more of these drills into your tool belt to help your athletes get faster and more explosive, and look at sprinting from a technical background standpoint, and look at what I look at for my football athletes to help with their field sport and their skill. Okay, so our determinants of speed, how do we get our athletes faster? Well, it comes down to all these things that fall under the umbrella is our stride length and stride frequency, and everything under there is our body mass, leg stiffness, mobility, sprint drills, nutrition, plyometrics, and I'm gonna touch on some of those today. So the 3 things that I kind of look for when I look for proper sprinting is posture, mechanics, and rhythm, and I'll go over that today. So I wanted to go over, the first thing is our speed and tempo session warm-ups. And this is the very first thing we need to do. And once I started coaching a little bit more football with athletes, and I helped out at a lot of local camps and helped out with local teams like the Regina Riot, I found that there wasn't a great warm up in practice. And even working media for the riders, I had to go to their practices, and just watching, even at the CFL level, I saw there wasn't a great warm up presence. And this is what I'm going to put forward with a science background, showing you a really good warm up that's put together for those speed and tempo days. That's going to have your athletes warm and ready to go and use the muscles that they need to require to prevent them from injuries as well. Because we hit hamstrings, we hit everything, we hit mobility in this warm up. So let's go over it. I even have it labeled here. So skipping arm circles, I like to start from the feet up. So this is just activating everything from the feet to the shoulders that's involved in sprinting. I kind of do a nice jog back, and you can go more than 10 yards here, but I just kind of kept it to 10 yards for purposes of this video. Backwards arm circles, that's going to hit hamstrings as well. And see how I'm just picking up the leg and I'm really driving that leg backwards. Skipping arm raises as well. Very healthy to get the shoulders involved with this, because they are sprinting and should be bringing those arms out really big. So we'll talk about that. Skipping sideways, getting a little shuffle in there. And this is everything we're doing, is we're upping the tempo as we go while I work with these athletes, and just having really good mobility as we go forth here. Okay, so easy acceleration, which is just a sprint. And when I give these accelerations, is I give a percentage. So you saw back there, I gave 80%. So we're just getting warmed up, right? We don't want our athletes to get it. So that's kind of a slower sprint for me, just getting really warmed up. Our butt kickers, obviously really good to help our athletes not overstride, because that can cause a lot of injuries if we start pulling the track or the turf. And then I actually hit a backwards. So this is a backwards butt kicker, which is amazing because it's going to keep your hips under you. Let's go back to there. Backwards butt kickers. It's going to keep your, yeah, so right there. This is going to hit the hamstrings even more. And I'm very, very conscious when I warm up the hamstrings for these athletes, because we don't want any injuries. Crossovers, a little karaoke to get that mobility, and everybody knows that one. Just getting a little jog back. Going to the other side. All right, then I up the acceleration level, and then I say at 90% of your maximal efforts, let's do another sprint. Now we're getting a little bit more mobility in there, and this is really good for form and function, right? Really bringing that adductor and adduction and abduction, bringing those legs back and forth, opening up those hips. I hear way too many hip injuries with my athletes. This is so simple. Anyone can do this. I just do 1 times 10 each side. Okay, I'll fast forward that a little bit. Then we go to the side. We bring the leg up and we get a nice hamstring curl in the back. And this is going to help our athletes and prevent them from overstriding as well. So that's why I added this into our warm-up exercise. 1 times 10 each side. Okay, then I make them do another easy acceleration, 95%. So we're upping it even more. So then we got our high knee drill, which is just kind of like your running A's, into a softer start acceleration. So now we're kind of upping the level. We got our butt kickers for 5 yards. And then we got another acceleration for a little bit longer. So we're upping the intensity of our warm-ups to get really, really ready for our sprinting. Side shuffle for 5 yards into an acceleration. And when I say acceleration for these ones, they're still going to be 95% as we're upping the level. And then we do our build-up runs. So we start this sprint, 70%, 80%, 90, 95, as we're coming out of that warm-up and into the main workload for the day. And that's what we have for our warm-up. So the next section I have is our speed session drills. So everybody knows what high knees are, right? So they're called in the sprinting world marching A's or skipping A's. So the first one I do, form and function. I say, athletes, we're gonna get form and function. I want those arms 90-90 because we are walking. So even if they are football athletes, I say get those arms 90-90 because we're really gonna work on that form and function before we start going. I know during the sprint, they won't have their arms 90-90 the entire time, and I will touch on that. We want the knee up. So I have the 3 bucket effect. I pretend there's a bucket of water on our head, so we're super tall, a bucket of water on our knee, so we're not going to tip that bucket. And I'm almost carrying a bucket of water in our hand, so we're not going to tip that bucket over. And when I say 90-90, I say chip to dip. So we're pretending we're holding a potato chip because it's coming up to our mouth. And we don't want to crush that chip because it's going to put too much tension in our shoulders. And then we'll get a limited range of motion with our arm drive. Nice soft chip, and we got the dip in the back. So put the chip in the dip. And that really helps with athletes kind of, yeah, everyone likes chips. And then I joke, I say, what's your favorite chip? So that kind of helps us get that movement down. And I see way too many people bringing that knee up too high, and that's over rotating the athlete's trunk and core. And of course, toe dorsiflexion, right? I'm getting that toe up, which is going to drive that heel to that hamstring. See, I got a nice little Z there. I don't want the foot coming all the way, the knee coming out and the foot coming out, so it's making an L. I want a nice Z under your butt there. So those are some things to look for your athletes when they're doing these drills. And you will notice when I'm working with football athletes, I don't make them do the running, skipping B or running B, because with the football athletes, they seem to lean back way too much and over rotate. So with the B, you're coming out more and you're pulling the turf and you're pulling the track. I actually stay within the A group for my football athletes. So we'll do our A mocks, our marching, our walking, and then our running A's, which are our high knees. And you guys all know these ones. So I'm just keeping my form and function, form and function, form and function. Okay, so now we're warm. So there's another way to manipulate these drills. So if you're really, really good at that, doing that already, you can get a partner just to add a little resistance on your athlete, because you have to come up harder, you have to come up stronger, you have to put a little bit more force and apply more force to the ground to do this activity. So this is one way to manipulate that, and I have one more way to manipulate the other one. So when I put the band around my waist, it's going to show your athlete where your waist is in space and time, because some athletes hinge at the hip, they start going forward or too far backwards. I love having that band on because it's going to keep me up tall, nice and straight, and I have to push forward. So this is a great way to manipulate that exercise once again. If you've moved past just the walking and the marching and the skipping A's and you're really good at them, here's a great way to do this. Okay, so the next part of our warm up, and I actually do this for a lot of I have a couple guys that were getting ready for the combine. I noticed their arm drive was just not very good. So I incorporated these arm drills into our warm ups, and I saw such a great benefit with their arm drive right off the bat, because they were getting ready for their 40, right? And they were getting ready to sprint fast. So if you guys are sprinting fast, here's a couple arm drills and reaction time you can do. As a coach, you can stand behind your athlete, you can clap and just explode those arms out, right? We're working on those fast twitch fibers, explode those arms out, just be behind them. Do a couple of those after your warm up and you're ready to go. You can even do a little arm separation with extension, kind of slowing it down so we can watch it and see how I'd react off of him. And then even you can do one clap for 8 reps here. So I'll do 8 in a row. So this is going to be very key and crucial for guys to kind of get that and expand that arm drive, get them better sprinters. So I'm going to break down what a sprint is. And I like to break it down for my athletes in 2 forms. And I've come across way too many football athletes that are just going through the motions. I say, how do we break down this 40? How do we actually get you faster? Is we break down your sprint into segments. So we can look at acceleration and then maximal velocity. So for our acceleration phase, we'll talk more about that. Then we'll talk about maximal velocity. We're going to have that greater body lean, longer ground contact time, shorter flight phase, greater knee extension. So let's look at acceleration. This is what one of my athletes first taking off from his sprint. He's got that little almost lean forward. And I don't like to say get low for my athletes because a lot of the time they hinge at the hip. I just like to say, get that nice angle, get that lean when you're coming out, and we'll explode from there. So it's for our football athletes, it's the first 8 to 10 yards of the sprint because they're often running at maximal, like the 40-yard. So we get that forward posture, increase vertical and stride length for this one. So you just want to get like a big start out there, push down and back before we get up nice and tall. They decrease ground contact time, increase flight phase. So we want to get full range of motion and apply force the entire time for this. So what I like to say is be the hashtag, because I often take videos of my athletes and we try to line up, are you leaning? Is anything out of whack here? So we see the body being nice, this nice line here. I love it. We want the arm coming up right in front of us, right in front of our face. We want that knee drive punching in the air. Sometimes just a shallow knee drive can be the determinant of a faster or slower athlete. And that's what I've come across in my findings. So improving our arm mechanics, early acceleration, right? We're gonna bring that one arm up. We want the second arm coming back, nice and flex, not all the way totally back, but nice and flex when you're pushing off the ground and working on that get off. Strong posture and that nice line. So do this, push hard down and back. Don't be that rounded athlete, which I see a lot of my receivers doing. So we work on posture and position all the time. So I want to talk about different ways we can kind of incorporate starts with our athletes. So there's two starts we're going to talk about: soft starts and hard starts. With our soft starts, it's a better way to help our athletes not put so much energy into a start and kind of leave our quality starts a little bit later. So you can actually warm up with more softer starts and get your blood flowing, and you're not going to put too much pressure on your central nervous system, your CNS. So our soft starts, and I'll give you some examples of those, are smooth starts from higher set positions, right? Movement added to the start, like falling starts, less energy and tension required, and they're going to be so much better on your joints. Less foot, ankle, and Achilles calf stress. So typical distance is like 10 to 40 yards for this. Falling starts, walk-in starts, flying starts for your athletes. So I have some video here of different starts I used with my athletes. There we go. So this one here is a staggered falling start. I actually commanded my athlete, we'll listen here, because I said fall and then fall and go. So that's one of my, there we go. Okay, the second one here is our tall and fall start. So I'm gonna bring my knee up and I'm already in the falling action. This one's gonna work a lot of trunk for those athletes, right? So this is why I really appreciate the tall and fall one, and it's less detrimental on the joints. Okay, and really pushing off there. Falling starts, now we can have an even set position for those people that are starting off in a more even set, getting just up a little heel raise and falling until we can't handle it anymore, right? Because I'm still coming out, pushing out. I'm still getting that leaning form right there. I'm still getting that optimal knee drive. And you will see a lot of athletes cave in this position, and then you can see where their weaknesses lie. And this is why I love testing my athletes with tall and falls or falling starts. All right. Okay, so here's some good starts for your athletes, and they might look pretty simple. And I thought maybe you would think these are simple, but change of direction. So we got backwards laying starts. I have to plant and I have to go. So that's super, super important for some of these athletes that need to plant and just work on their get off from there and sprinting out of that position. So staggered falling sled starts as well. With the sled, I only put on 10% of my personal body weight. So I always ask my athlete, what is their body weight? And I just put on 10% of that because we want to still be super fast. And I thought maybe that little nugget of information could help you guys a little bit more when you're planning sled pulls, because the more weight we put on, the more it's just going to destroy that form. So I like my staggered falling sled starts with 10% of my body weight. And I also love the sleds that have more of the vests up here, because it's not going to pull. I hate the ones that have at the waist, because then my athletes tend to hinge at the hips and come down. So if you guys are looking for equipment, I would get ones that go around the shoulders. Okay, so those are some examples of our soft starts, and you guys can incorporate in your practice to kind of start off maybe some of the practice. You guys can even do like 5 times 10 falling starts. Okay, so we're gonna look at our hard starts. So explosive starts from stationary positions. A lot of energy required for these. Greater knee flexion at start, greater foot and ankle Achilles stress, typically 10 to 20 yards. So this is an example of our block starts, push-up starts, 3-point starts, and medicine ball starts. So as you guys know, the one that's looked at the most is our 3-point start. So how I set up a 3-point start, I'll just go over it really quick. And I do this for my combine athletes because I have to get them ready for the combine. How can we set up a very good 3-point start that you're going to start and you're going to be down low and keep driving for the amount of the 10 yards that you need to do to be fast overall. So I look at hips, head, and hands. So I actually do one of my personal feet away. If you're taller, maybe 1.5 feet. And the second one is 2 feet away for me. I am 5 feet, so if that gives you a little direction. Taller athlete, 2.5 feet. So that's where I put my feet. I put my hand on the line, right down there. I put my other hand just in front, just to give me a little bit of guidance there. I kind of put my head down because way too many athletes are looking where they're going, and we want to bring our head down to create a better shin angle when we push off. I'm going to come up, raise those hips a little bit, bring that hand right by my side. It's not going to be fully up in the air. I'm straight over the line, as you guys see right there. So that's going to give me more momentum going forward. I'm going to push off, change that shin angle, and go. And look at that low heel recovery. And that's exactly what we want to see for a 3-point start. So some of our hard starts, again, we can do a 4-point start if you guys want, which is just 4 points of contact. You can do staggered start, which is a 2-point of contact. So I say, guys, 2-point starts, which is super easy here. Just 1 foot in front. I want that athlete to get low because sometimes their back leg is super straight and you have to look for that. If that's the case, they're going to stand right up. So we have to look at that knee. We have to shift that shin angle down, drop it, and go. As soon as I drop here, I change that knee is pointing downwards and I'm up and I'm off, right? I'm getting that triple extension, which is extension at the ankle, at the knee here, and at the hip, and I'm already gone. This is a great start here. Good, okay. This is one of my D linemen. We're actually doing a kneeling start for him because he's working on his get off. And when I was watching him sprint, he wasn't able to get down, and he's a little bit older of an athlete. Yeah, he wasn't able to get down as low as he would like. So we actually brought him down to kneeling starts, which is just on the ground here, because you see here, he's able to challenge that ankle a lot more and shift that shin right there as soon as he pushes off, which is that's perfect right there. So we're seeing him achieve that by doing some kneeling starts. And I would encourage you guys to kind of put that into your programming as well. Push-up starts. This is going to challenge that trunk position once more. You could do a segmented push-up start. So I like to even call push-up, and then I say knee, bringing one knee up and holding it to challenge that first start and pushing off from there. And we got our sled pull starts without doing a little fall into it, just a hard push out. And then we got our med ball to throw, med ball throw to sprint. So we'll push off with that med ball, working on that get off as well, and sprinting out after it. So it's going to work on that ground contact time and making that a little bit less. So we got our med ball side throw to sprint for change of direction. We're changing direction, throwing and sprinting. All right, so we got our resisted sprint. So it helps out with our nervous system, recruit even more muscle fibers. So how I set this up is I'll do a resisted sprint with my athlete first, then we do our regular sprint second, because it's going to be that post-activation potentiation. And I know that's a big word, but we're actually recruiting more motor neurons by giving a little bit of like resisted movement and sprinting here to get us faster for our second workload. And we'll actually get faster for our sprints right after that. So after we do the resisted sprints, wait about 3 minutes, then we get into our regular sprints. So right here, I have 2 types of resisted sprints. The first one here, my coach is holding me back. He's resisting for about 5 yards or 5 meters, then he lets go and I have an accelerated effect. The next one here is I find a lot of athletes are not balanced when they're getting into a 3-point or a 2-point position. Here's a great way to fix that. So you can use a band, you can use whatever you want for this one. I'm gonna get set up in that position, and I actually have to push, my coach is gonna hold the tension. I have to push out against him to even go. So he's gonna hold the tension, and I'm just gonna snap and go. So that's really huge for any of those athletes that really need to work with those get-offs. And when I see athletes are struggling with just their 10 meter and their 40, I actually make them do this the most, because we need to work on more closed chain exercises if they are struggling with their 10 meter or 10 yard. So maximal velocity, our second part of the sprint. We were down, we were leaning for that 8 to 10 yards there. Now we are transitioning up into that upright posture. And you can see my athlete, we were timing a little bit here. He's getting that upright posture where he's coming upright. He's a little squatty in that position, which is totally fine because he is a football athlete. I don't mind him right there. He's looking really good. He's still getting that knee drive, and he's applying force downwards into the ground. And he's not crossing those arms over like a regular soccer or football player. He's bringing them out in front of himself and pulling. So shortest ground contact time, greatest hip height at this point, and this is the highest hamstring involvement. So if you do have athletes that have hamstring issues, I would go with short sprints, because the longer you sprint, the more you start to come up and the more you involve the hamstring. So for my athletes that are coming back from hamstring injury, I actually just do short sprints to begin with, so we don't keep aggravating that hamstring. They can still work on their fast twitch fibers, which is what I want to achieve, without stressing out that hamstring. Okay, be the hashtag one more time with our vertical emphasis. You can take some videos of your athletes and you can show them, are you in that nice position where you're creating these lines? And when I say creating these lines, this is like the perfect amount of form. Your athletes don't have to hit exactly this. Every athlete is different. And we can get as close as possible. That's what we want to achieve with these athletes. So why train maximal velocity? You're like, we play football, we're not running that far sometimes, but many team sports rarely hit their true maximal velocity, but game-changing plays often depend on top speed. You kind of see DK Metcalf chasing down Buda Baker here. He went 22 miles per hour. So I got some next-gen stats here of the speed of some of these football athletes, and you can see they're pretty speedy. So when it comes up to maximal velocity speed and a game-changing play, they will need to train that top speed, because they will get up there, right? So that's one of the reasons that I do train maximal velocity and top speed with these athletes. All right, so upright mechanics may begin as early as 20 yards. And I love showing this because Ken Clark actually did a little testing at the NFL Combine, I believe in 2018 or 2019. He took all the maximal velocity profiles of the bigs and littles and athletes and put them together from their 40-yard dash. And this was his findings, is that he found that all of the athletes, regardless of size, hit their peak 89 to 96% of the athletes actually hit their maximal velocity at 20 meters or 20 yards here, which is really interesting, because like professional track and field athletes actually hit it a little bit later on. But for these NFL athletes, they're going to hit it around 20 meters. So that shows us that we don't even need to really make them run a whole bunch of 100 meters or 40s. If you are in a season, we can get away with doing just a couple 20-yard dashes, because they're going to hit their maximal velocity and their top end speed right away without putting a lot of stress on their central nervous system. So I thought that that was really interesting to show you guys. Is we're kind of doing away with doing a lot of the cardio where we're making them run wind sprints for 300 meters. We can actually just do a few maximal 20s or 30s, which would be really good, because those athletes will be hitting those top end speeds within that distance. So maximal velocity drills, here's one of my favorite ones, because it actually helps your athletes open up their stride length and frequency. And I know we're always talking about our fast feet drills. We got a lot of those ladder drills, and I will touch on that a little bit, but we're looking beyond that. There's not, I just don't find a lot of emphasis on the ladder drills to help you with speed overall. But if we can challenge those hip flexors and extensors, we can actually open up our stride and become faster overall, and our brain can rewrite it in that way. So this is actually going to make us faster. So I give us a little bit of lead up here, and I make those cones about two meters apart, because that's the average stride length for a female. You can make it a little bit bigger for a male. So multiple cone drill, I get in my 2-point start, I'm pushing out and I'm getting 1 foot. As you can see, I'm nice and high here. I'm up on that foot, not on my toes, which I will talk about. We don't want our athlete running on our toes. I have good hip height. I have good foot height. I'm getting those arms 90-90, and I'm putting energy into that ground and I'm popping up. So it's gonna help with one of your maximal velocity drills. So agility training for field sport athletes. Now, I think this is super important, some of the drills I put together. You can certainly do way more, but here are some of the best ones that I thought I'd present to you today. So backpedaling to a sprint, right? So for some of our agility, I'm going to talk about which athletes would need this. Lateral progression. So all the athletes are going to need just a little bit of lateral work, just keeping those hips low and going through all of our little lateral drills here. So I do this with tons of positions of my athletes, and I'll talk about the different positions and who would benefit from it. But these are some of the great ones for field sport athletes. And we can go through these drills, the ladder snake backwards as well, just to work on those quick hips and movement. Rounded running drills. So this is super, super important. And when people say, what can I do for fast feet? I'd rather you guys do rounded running drills, because that's going to be in real time, right? We have to turn up field and we have to run around. I get lots of my athletes to do this one, and I'll explain all the positions that could benefit from it. So single leg lateral hop, we have to do power from our single leg, because we want to work on some of that single leg work here and see how I'm taking off with that arm drive, knee drive, and I'm working on that balanced position there. Because sometimes in a game, we're gonna land on one side and we have to push off the other side. Okay, so med ball training for our field sport athletes. At the end of our training and our sprint stuff, we can actually incorporate some med ball stuff to get a little bit more explosiveness. And I think this is huge for the athletes as well. So I have a little rotational med ball throw here. As you can see, I'm exploding through those hips and just rotating, which is perfect for these field sport athletes, bringing to the side slow and exploding through the hips. Now, when I'm doing my kneeling rotation med ball toss, I like this because it's isolating my trunk and my core here, and I can't use too much of my legs, because as an Olympic lifting athlete, I use a lot of my legs for my explosive movements. So it's isolating my trunk and core here. All right, so our above head med ball toss. Why I love this? It's just above our head, and as we flick it here, it's going to be equivalent to doing a whole bunch of sit-ups. I never make my athletes do sit-ups. We do stuff like this that's going to manipulate our trunk or core a lot better than doing sit-ups, because those are out now. People aren't doing those anymore. So I just do, for those, I would do one set of 10 at the end of training. And then I would do overhead med ball throws. So a lot of coaches ask me about Olympic lifting for athletes, and I compete in the sport, so I might have a bias. So I think it's amazing. But another way you can actually do the Olympic lifting movements with your athletes is doing med ball throws, because we are having the ball in our hand, and it's going to manipulate that triple extension you will get from doing a snatch or clean and jerk. And we can actually keep the ball in line close to our body and get that leg explosion, our glute explosion, everything we need to manipulate that velocity that we would get in Olympic lifting, but not as crucial, and it's not going to be as heavy on our joints as Olympic lifting. So we'll do our backwards heaves. We could do 2 sets of 8 for that at the end of training. You could have someone throwing you back the ball, and our forward one, right? Because I'm not hinging at the hips. I'm coming all the way down like I'm expressing a power clean. I'm bringing it up, and for height. You can do it for height, or you can do it for distance. So staggered med ball throw press. I'm pressing it out. I'm giving myself a little triple extension here too, as I'm popping out here, exploding at those hips and those arms, working on that get off, couple steps out. So hopefully this gives you guys more ideas to kind of put with your athletes. And seated med ball chest press. So just throw in that med ball to your partner. The last one is a little plyometric activity. Hop to med ball throw. So we're gonna hop. I give myself a couple hops, and it's gonna work on that just like quick steps movements without doing anything like speed ladder. Okay, so how to increase our speed overall? So there's a few ways we can actually manipulate our brain, because if we keep running the same speed, our brain will just record that. and we won't get any faster. So we actually have to challenge ourselves in various ways to get a little faster through flying sprints to help develop that top end speed, and in and outs. And I'll talk about the in and outs because it's going to challenge those, like I said, hip flexors and extensors to increase that limb range and get ourselves a little bit faster. So let's go in and outs first. So with in and outs, we're going to have little segments here, and you guys can do this 5 yards, 5 yards, 5 yards, 5 yards, or 10 yards, depending on what athlete you're training in that day. So we're going to sprint hard, maintain or float, sprint hard, maintain or float to the end. So our first one is our flying sprint I have demoed here. So you can see I'm going off into almost 70% of my maximal efforts. As soon as I hit this cone here, I'm going 100% from there to the end. So that's more of a soft start as well. And that's going to challenge my body to get faster by just starting out in a slower position here. And as soon as I hit this, I'm on very hard. And then when we look at our in and outs, I'm sprinting hard here. I'm maintaining, sprinting hard, and then I'm maintaining here. So those are two very great exercises to incorporate with your athletes that are going to overwrite their brain. And you can kind of put that into your training once a week if you would like, or once every couple weeks to help kind of get over plateaus where we see people struggling to get over there. So you're like saying, how do we turn our athletes to sport? This is an example of sprint volume for different positions. So if we look at football linemen, in our week 1, we could do 5 times 10 meters or yards, whatever you guys are using, 5 times 10 meters, 5 times 10 meters. And you can see I gave them around 150 meters of work. So when I train my athletes, I actually count like the meters that we're running, and I add that up in volume because it's super, super important when we are first starting out. When you guys bring your guys return to play, please keep that in mind, is how much volume are we putting into their bodies right now, because are they ready to get back into it? This is going to be a prevention of injury by slowly ramping it up. And you can see by week 4, we ramped it up to 200 meters. So after that, we'll keep ramping it up and keep ramping it up. So if you guys go 2 times per week, we have here, you can ramp it up to 300 meters and 400 meters. If you guys are able to see your athletes 3 times per week, you can get a little bit more volume in there. Our linebackers and running backs, week 1, for example, we got 10s and 15 meters. And then by week 4, we got 10s, 20s, and 30 meters. For our quarterbacks, it kind of depends. Like I would sometimes put them in the shorter group. They're not running really far, guys, but it depends what their goals are. Maybe if they are training for a 40, I'll make them run a little bit farther. But if they're not going too far, it depends what kind of quarterback they are. We'll go a little shorter speed. And then over here, we have our receivers, DBs. I'll put them in that group as well, and special team players. So week 1, we're going 10, 15, 20 with these guys, and we're going even farther in week 4, 20, 30, and 40. So as you guys can see, we'll ramp it up as we go. And then I wanted to show you kind of like the sprint volume spectrum for sports and positions. And I even have different sports on here so you can kind of see where your athlete lies, right? Because our linemen, they require a lot less distance and volume because they are bigger guys or girls. So not all sprints are created equal. So central nervous system stress, the farther we run, so if we run around 50 meters there, high CNS stress, low CNS stress on the 10 meters. So for example, if I was bringing my athletes, say they have a game on Saturday, I actually will bring them in Friday and we'll do a couple 10s and 20s just to get their central nervous system firing, but we're not going to put a whole bunch of stress on that system and like get them all stressed out, but they need a little bit of sprinting to get them firing. And I've seen greater results on return from doing just the 10s and 20s than getting them really gassed out and maybe doing a walkthrough for them. That's been huge for me. So speed drills for football linemen. So here's some drills that I'm demoing a lot of these drills. So if I don't look like a lineman, I played corner and running back, so I might butcher it, but here we go. Okay, so we got the offensive lineman drill, getting into our 3-point stance, right? Rounded running. So these are just like a few more that I would include for just that positional stuff. Like you guys are going to work on your positional stuff as well, but here's a couple sprint ones that you can do out of that position. We can sprint, do a little crossover. So I got my athlete doing a little crossover here into rounded running, right? And with my lineman, we do like 5 or 10 yards for this one. We're coming back and we are sprinting right through there. So I like this one because we can go either way here. I give them a little drop and around the cone, change of direction, sprint up. Also here, they can get in their they can get in their 3-point stance here, and we're exploding around. You guys, you can either do bag drills or exploding around the mini hurdles there or cones. This is in fast motion here. Here we go. Again, I like to get a little kind of rush of my hands in there. I say fast hands, so I kind of make them go through that fast hand motion. Also, we can do it from here. I make them cross over and we're getting a little sprint out to the side. Oh my goodness, there we go. I don't know why it's doing that today. Okay, so we're starting here. And we are sprinting right through and sprinting to the other side. So same thing and taking off the other direction. For my tight ends, I actually like this drill because we're exploding out, right? I'm exploding out, I'm getting that foot out, just quick feet. I just like to have that little pull at 45-degree angle. Quick feet coming out, boom, boom, boom. One foot is coming outside of that pole, the other foot's coming inside, and just like pausing right there. So this is another quick feet one. As me as the coach, I'm saying go, and my athlete is just doing back and over the line here, and then I say go again, and they take off in a sprint. So that's another quick feet drill that you guys can do just to get them excited and warmed up for the sprinting day. So I'm going to reiterate this drill because I also think it's really good for defensive linemen as well, is that crossover and that rounded running. Like I said, it's really good for these athletes to do that rounded running. These guys, I gave them the same drill as the linemen, but I also gave them a little different one here. So we're getting a little bit more athletic, turning around, giving a little curl there. I'll let you watch that one again. Coming around that cone, nice low hips. Okay, and these guys are a little bit more athletic, so we're having a little more linear run and plant and coming over the middle. That one's such a good one for change of direction. Okay, and then we got it to the side, a little linear run, getting those knees up. This is one of my athletes here. This is one of my defensive linemen that's actually doing one of the falling drills here. And we were working on this just to challenge his core and trunk position a little bit more. And he's got a big explosive drive right there. So we've been working on that one for a bit with him. And also I needed to challenge his ankles and shin mobility. So I made him do a kneeling start, but we actually raised it up quite a bit because he wasn't ready to get fully down on the ground. And you guys can use this as well. So he's coming up just a little bit, little raised, and he's taken off there. And you can see he's got that explosive arm drive, and we're working on being more explosive and working on that get off with him. And he's done such a good job. I'm also working on with them doing 3 consecutive broad jumps in a row. So I actually measure my athletes' broad jumps 3 in a row. Baseline when I first start training with them. And every week I actually touch on this again. And depending on where their numbers are at, if they're below what they're used to jumping, we actually adjust training because their central nervous system is fatigued. So that's one of the biggest ways to show me that we need to adjust training. If it's above, I actually add more volume. So that's one of the best ways to figure that out for your athletes. We have running back and linebacker drills. So running back, fast feet, right? Getting those fast feet into explosion and ball security and having the ball up there. And I just explode out. So that's, you guys can make it a little bit longer than that. So this is my up and over series. So you can see it's 5 yards up, 5 yards across, 5 yards up and over. I'm getting a little shuffle in and explode. There's a different variations for this. So I'll show you all the variations. I'm backpedaling and switching those hips and I'm up. And you guys can use this with your athletes. This one is my little rounded running ones. And my next one's gonna be my hard cuts one, my little hard cuts here. There we go. Okay, we got our zigzag series here, little hard cuts to begin with here, just change of direction. So you guys can make these 5 yards, 5 yards. I do this one, this is great for breaking down, right? So I'm running hard, breaking down, using those arms and switching. And you can even, for that breakdown one, I'll even command my athlete to stop. I'll say, stop, go, stop, go. Okay, this one's my crossover one. So I'm looking forward the entire way. I'm actually looking forward the entire way and I'm crossing over. So that's going to be a great one. And you can even cross over and stop with your athletes. You can say, go, stop, go, stop. All right, so plyometrics 2. We're jumping up and even stopping and breaking down. Jumping and exploding from that falling position, because that's going to be huge too, especially for our ankles and mobility. Okay, this is one of my linebacker high school athletes. So this is one of my up and over drills as well. So we're just going up and then we're falling back, right? We're just challenging his hip flexors, staying low as much as he can. A little series right there, and you guys can make that as long. I would keep it short because it's quite tasking for the athletes and my linebackers. We also have another drill here. This one's a W drill. As you can see right there, it looks like a little mini W. So I actually start them from backpedaling to switching and exploding through, backpedaling and switching and exploding through. With more space, you guys can make it farther out. I just didn't have a lot of space for this one. All right. So receivers, let's look at some receivers, DBs, and special teams drills. Okay, I'm going to add this one back in because it's super important, right, for our DBs to drop back and run through there. So this one as well, I really want to have this one for our receivers and DBs because we are backpedaling, right? So we're coming up, I just put that one back in just to show that it can be used for another position as well. All right, for our DBs, of course, switching those hips. And when I do this, I'm usually like the coach there that's standing right there that's saying switch, 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 or I'm moving the ball back and forth. And then we run out of this position. So switching all the way around and I'm exploding through. So again, W drill for all these positions as well is really important because we get that little back pedal and explosive movement in there. So receivers, right? We're changing positions. Change in direction and exploding through. So that's going to work through the change in direction, exploding. And these are going to be really good for that is those lying ones. You guys can do a clap start from this one. You can say go. They're changing that direction and going. And it's going to be less stress on your central nervous system. And then our bounding starts. So we're going to get our athletes to get into our 2-point start. Switching that shin down. I'm exploding out through that and I am bounding. So I'm putting more pressure onto the ground where I'm exaggerating my arm drive and knee drive to almost pop off the ground. And you can see it's super fast and super explosive. And I love doing these bounding drills with these athletes. We'll watch that bounding one just one more time in real time here because it's going to increase their stride length and frequency. Getting that toe up. Okay, quarterbacks. I want to put this one back in because quarterbacks, we're going to have to drop back a little bit. So I give this to the quarterbacks I have as well. This one. So I'm going to get my quarterback to drop back 3 steps, 5 steps, whatever you guys want to do. I did a couple steps here and then I ran right through. I did my best quarterback impression. So rounded running. So I get my quarterbacks. Even as a coach, like I say go, and then I put the pressure on them. Like I follow my athlete into this rounded running. I follow them. So I'll pretend like I'm putting a little pressure on them. This one, because we want to have not always bigger stride lengths for our quarterbacks, but little tiny steps and right through, and you can sprint right through. This is just an example, right? So that's another way you guys can do fast feet stuff, and it's not just using a complete ladder. So now we did all this work. I talked your ear off about the work. Let's talk about cooldowns because it's super, super important. Sometimes we just let our athletes leave. No, let's do a little cool down. And this one's super important for our knees and joints and everything going on. So what I'm doing is I'm just putting my foot down and I'm raising my heel because I feel like way too much these athletes, they're putting in so much volume and you guys are returning to play. This is going to be great for injury prevention. Is not stressing out those calves, hamstrings, knees, Achilles. This is going to be great for that. So this one, I'm just walking on my toes sideways. And I want you guys to do 2 times these things. I'm only going through it once in this demo video, but even go 2 rounds there and back. I'd rather you guys go around 10 yards. So this one, I'm just going backwards, just side to side. And this one's for hamstrings as well. And it's not greatly intense. I'm just cooling down. I'm getting my athletes. I take off my shoes because it's really good for proprioception. So on the feet, this is one of my athletes after our workout. I'm just getting him to cool down and work on that proprioception on the feet again. So he's just doing light bunny hops or rudiments, as some people do call them, for around 10 yards here. And he's getting that height and he's cooling down the body by just working on little tiny hops here. And I love this because it really brings them back to center. We're bringing that nervous system back down to the grounded level. We sprinted really fast. And we're giving those feet some love because we really destroyed those feet with sprinting. Side to side, such a good one. Side to side. And that's, I would do these all at the end. As you can see, if the athlete's kind of struggling through them, which he might be at the end here, we kind of shut it down after that, right? And then the last one you can do is just a little single leg stuff. If you have athletes that have bilateral deficits, which just means one leg is stronger than the other, I really encourage you guys to work on that single leg stuff because it's going to be huge, especially return to injury. And you frontwards, sideways, and I believe the next one is backwards. Oh, that's all I had actually. So those are really good ones. You guys can do single leg, double leg of those rudiments and hops, and that's going to be huge for cool downs and getting your athletes return to play. And this is an example of what a training week would look like with your sprinting stuff. So on a high day, might be a Monday, you can do sprinting. I would leave like a little break there and do a little bit of agility, not do it just back to back. So you can get like a really good 45-minute to an hour sprinting session in, a little bit of agility later, maybe your lifting session. It doesn't have to be Olympic lifting, but this is kind of a table I found on the internet that kind of showed Derek Hansen's high-low training week for American football players, which is really, really good because this is how I program for my athletes. We do a high, we do a low day, which is our tempo day. And when we go into our aerobic capacity work, it's going to be a little bit of longer running, around 50%. So I'll make my athletes do like 540s at 50% of their maximal effort, right, on that lower day, so they can kind of get that stride length, frequency, and work on form and function. And it's going to turn that CNS to normal. Okay, what cues should I use if I'm watching these athletes? So when we're working on that acceleration phase, tell them to push down and back, explode once your thigh gets to the top. Our legs need to be scissors, right? If we're coming up with our leg, we need to explode down with the same one. I've seen some people be off on that, so that's a good one to say. Hit your calf to your hamstring, as I showed you guys previously. Drop your shoulders, relax, relax. Oh my gosh, way too many athletes. They're just so stressed up here on the shoulders. They're limiting their range of motion. They got small T-Rex arms. Just relax, open up that arm and you'll open up your range of motion. The arms work, your legs are gonna open up too. Get up for maximal velocity. You don't have to be completely 100% like a sprinter, because I know these are football athletes, but get up there, work on that top end speed. Cues not to say, don't tell your athletes to stay low because like they often hinge at the hip, and I don't like saying low. I say get that angle, lean. Get that angle, because then that shows them that they need more straighter back and form and function for that. Should feel like you're falling. It shouldn't always feel like you're falling when you're trying to catch up with your body. You should be having a little bit of control with that trunk. Keep arms at 90 degrees the whole time. You don't have to, right? Because these are football athletes. If it kind of breaks for a little bit, don't worry about it. As long as we're working on that form and function when we're doing those skipping A drills, that's what I like to see. And that's when I implement that the most. Cast a foot out and pull the ground. I hear that with way too many parents. We are not casting a foot out and pulling the ground at all. We're actually just bringing that leg up and putting it right underneath back our hips and coming over our body. Sprint on your toes. That's another great one that I hear people say, and do not sprint on your toes. You're going to mess up your feet in the long run. So we're going to touch when we are sprinting. I'll show you right here on my shoe. We're just going to hit our foot right here on the bottom here with our little heel up. That's where we're going to strike. We're going to strike on the surface for sprinting, not on our toes. So get a high turnover. We are just going to, don't get that knee way too high, right? Because then I see tons of athletes having a weaker core or trunk because of it. And that's going to make them weaker overall and create some injuries. Awesome. So I'm Amada Ruller, and I hope you guys had a really good time listening to my presentation. So just remember, when cheetahs run super, super fast, it actually takes them a whole 48 hours to recover. And that's my science fact. That's my science fact of the day. And they are the fastest animal alive. So let's treat our athletes like cheetahs and to give them good recovery rest after they have sprinted really, really fast.
Great job, Amanda. Was that last cheetah quote because somebody at the combine a couple years ago says, "I've never seen a cheetah stretch"? Is that what you're?
Yes. Actually, yeah, 100%.
Any questions from anybody? I've got about 4 or 5 here myself, but I'll let some of the other.
Sure, I'll
Go ahead.
answer them to the best of my ability.
Anybody?
You go
All
first.
right.
I got some too, so go for it.
So one of the first ones, when should we be doing this with our athletes? Like some of that stuff, and I guess kind of comes back to one of the last pictures you just showed us about the example of the training week. Like obviously in Ontario, we're getting right now, I think we're going to probably be able to go, we'll say maybe an hour with about 10 athletes. Hey, that's a lot of athletes, or sorry, that's a few number of athletes for a long time, as you just said, right? Like sometimes as coaches we'll run them for the full 60 minutes and wear them out, right? So when should we start with some of that stuff that you showed us?
I think it's super important to start it now, especially with that low volume. And if you guys don't have to go for 45 to 60 minutes, put in the quality work here. I hate that sometimes coaches put in filler activities. Get in that quality sprint work. And I actually have a little example here. If someone had asked about it, I'm just going to share my screen one more time of what that might look like. So here's an example of what you can do. So you can even do a little form and function. So if you're just starting out, you can do the 2 times 10 meters, that marching 8. Like this is just if you see your athletes once or twice a week. So you can do your speed day, and then your tempo day the next day. So you got explosive push-up start with that. Start working and making those foundations. So that's why I put explosive push-up starts first, because it's going to work on our trunk and core and positioning. Then we go into our falling starts, and I don't even put in 3-point starts or 2-point starts here, because we're working on just getting that, getting some of that baseline stuff in here. And I only have 20 meters for 4 reps. Like we just want to get in a little bit of work now so that our volume isn't overloading their system. So I would start with just once a week, and then it has to be 45 minutes. Don't add a whole bunch of agility with them right now. So just do some soft starts to introduce them. Do a really big warm up as I have here, form and function, second place here, and then you guys can add some med ball stuff in there.
There you go, Rick. You got 2 practice plans already done.
Right, there we go. Yeah, sorry. And then the next day, we do have a little bit lower tempo day. So I would do our high sprint day, a low tempo day to get them even buffering like that lactic acid and metabolic waste that we kind of put up for that first day, because they will be sore. So the next day, we can even do 50 meters times 4. This was for some of my athletes that run a little farther. So you can even do like 30 meters times 4. A 3-minute break, because we want them to rest and recover. So it takes 3 whole minutes for our phosphocreatine system to recharge and our ATP system to get back to normal. That's why I say 3 whole minutes.
Charbs, you go ahead and ask your question. I got a couple more.
All right, perfect. Well, one, I really like the chip visual, because a lot of guys have the habit of, clenching that thumb into that index finger so hard.
Hard.
Like the white in the thumbnail. So I like that they're, just that visual, don't crush the chip. That's great stuff. And the hashtag, because everything is hashtag everything. So it's an easy visual for them to get. So when you're doing the in and outs, what was the distance between those the different velocities?
Yeah, it could be like if you have your linemen, like I would just do 5 yards, 5 yards, 5 yards, 5 yards. And if you do, say maybe your receivers, it could be even farther. So I would do 10, 10, 10, 10. And if you want to go wild, you can do 15, 15, 15, but I wouldn't go past 15, 15 times 4. So I don't go crazy until I don't do 20s, 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 because I used to do that for track and field myself, but I was running the 100 meter. So these guys that are running short just go 5s or 10s and then 15s.
Nice. Yeah, so we had the college that I was at, we did spring ball in the fall, and like all the stuff that you were just showing, that's what we did for the first, I don't know how many practices, just to get them back into it, right? Because they've been sitting around for so long and just getting their bodies ready for getting back into football. So getting their soft tissue, used to running again, instead of just sitting on a couch and playing, I don't know what video game they're playing these days, but so that's awesome stuff that you just gave there. So Rick, you got the next question?
So for high school athletes, you talked about one of your very first clips, you showed us the warm up. How far should that sort of, I think you did basically your arm circles and sort of the skipping. How far is that? Like how far should I be sending my guys?
15 meters. So I usually make my guys do 15 meters. I found if it's 20, especially for football athletes, especially 20 is too far. If I'm a track and field athlete, like when I did track and field, I did around 25, but that's because my warm-ups lasted almost 30 minutes for the stuff I was doing. The football athletes, I'm going to make it 15 minutes. And that's even longer than I've seen. Like I even played football and our warm-ups were like 5 minutes. And it wasn't dynamic. It was like very static stretching. So let's do 15 minutes for 15 yards of this dynamic, non-static warm-up.
Nice. How much does that medicine ball weigh that you were working with? And does it depend on the athletes?
Yeah, exactly. So for a lot of my athletes, I use just 10 pounds because we don't want to put a lot of pressure on their CNS, and they should be able to throw that med ball with perfect form. So I found like 10 pounds, 12 pounds for my guys is the sweet spot. So if I have girls, I actually do like 5 or 6 pound med ball, just because they're just a little bit different body type. But for my guys, I do 10 to 12. And then if you saw my really, really big lineman guys there, we actually do 14. So I do have a 14-pound med ball there. I won't go anything bigger because they say they can do it, because I'll always be like, no, I want to be tough. This isn't about toughness. It's about form and function. So just putting a little bit of manipulation on the arms and using that med ball, it's going to be a little bit lighter. So I would stick in the range like 10 to 14.
Yeah, they're definitely a great investment for any team. You can use them for drills, like even going through regular drills for football. You can use them and then use them at the end of practice to do a bunch of stuff like you had going and at the beginning of practice and stuff. So
yeah, endless.
They're a versatile thing to buy, so it's a good purchase.
Tell us a little bit about the Legends Football League. I know I've kind of looked through some of your videos and stuff that you've got up there, and it's pretty aggressive and tell us about it.
Yeah. So when I first wanted to play football, in 2012, there wasn't any football here. So I ventured out to the States and I joined the Legends Football League, and it was on TV at the time, like the Oprah Network, which was really, really cool because it was a platform for women to go out and play football. It was full on tackle football in the States. It was arena style. So we played in arenas. It was 7v7, which was really, really cool. I was on the LA Temptations, and then I played for the Atlanta Steam. That was a really fun experience. It was really cool to be with these women from different states and being able for me to travel around the states and play. It was a paid league at the time, but they don't pay the women anymore. So I came over and started playing in Canada for women's team, Canada Women's Football. So the Legends Football League, it was formerly, when it first started in 2008, the Lingerie Football League. So they fully adapted from there, and you wore a sports bra and kind of like shorts. But when I competed in track and field, that was what I wore to sprint. So for me, that was huge because I was like, I'm good. I'm a running back. Like, this is what I've worn before. So it was amazing to even work with these confident women that wanted to play football. So we would practice quite a bit and showcase our talents all over California at the time, and then Atlanta. So that was so much fun to do, and I'm glad I was part of it. And then I transitioned to Team Canada football. You saw the picture fully clothed and everything, and it was really, really fun to do both. And then when I had more padding for Team Canada, I was like, this is awesome. People can tackle me all they want. I'm not feeling it now, because I played a little less padding in the Legends League, so it was hard-nosed football.
Sorry, what was the Canadian League you just mentioned?
So the Canadian Women's World's Football. So I was on Team Canada for women, just like the U.S. We played against
together.
For Team Canada, they actually had tryouts in different provinces, and I attended one of the tryouts in Saskatchewan here in, I think, 2016, the December of 2016, because it was being played in the summer in BC. So we ended up going to BC as a team, because they picked people from different provinces and we could practice together. So we went to BC and then had like that full couple weeks of practice. And then we ended up playing in the tournament against USA and other people like that in Great Britain, and we came second.
And did you have to fundraise for that? How did that work for that one?
Yes, which is interesting, because you guys were mentioning fundraising. So I had to pay out of pocket, like, to play, which is like almost like, I think it was like almost $3,000, like, for me to play in that one tournament, and it like paid for flights and food and stuff. But it's too bad that like stuff wasn't funded for women to just go play. And I'm not sure about the men's side, because I didn't do any research about if they had to fundraise that much. But at the time, like, I did personal fundraising, like, they didn't give us a platform. And fortunate enough, I had a lot of interest on my social media. So I exchanged like personal training programs and stuff for fundraising. So that's what I did, because they didn't kind of help us with that. And I will say that they kind of left us on our own. And that I did on my own. I raised all of my money. So, but that was a pretty penny to pay to just go play in this tournament for Team Canada.
Yeah, absolutely. Because it's so tough. Well, for Canada, you're either going to choose to do it all from part of Ontario. They might just do the team just from part of Ontario. But if you go for the entire country, people are going to have to include the flights. And, if you're lucky, you might be able to get some of the players to billet other players when they come in and stuff. But there's a lot of costs associated. So, and you got to take time off of work. So that's the crazy thing too. So not an easy deal.
No. But it was an honor. I just want to say it was an honor for me to play for my country at that level. So it was awesome.
Yeah, it's pretty neat.
And Amanda, what's your plans right now? I know, like, I followed a little bit of sort of, you were with the Regina Rams, is that correct? The football team you helped coach?
Yeah. So I was helping coach speed, sprint training, agility with them up until the pandemic, and then had to call it quits. So I was working with them individually, because I was with the university. I was working with them individually. So hopefully maybe getting back with a university, or I'm working with Hub City Football in July here, July 18th. They are doing kind of an NFL combine camp for athletes that haven't been drafted. And I'm going to go down there. It's in San Diego, and I'm running warm-ups and cooldowns, and I'm working with the DBs. So that's something I'm working towards, and maybe getting some looks from coaches myself, because I really, really, really want to press more women into coaching in the CFL level. And I know, like, I'm not saying just me, any woman, just want to get an audition, an interview, and maybe make that happen for the future women in that sport, because I don't see a lot of representation. So that's something I wish for more internships at that level. And I'm just applying, and I'm putting myself out there as much as I can, doing stuff like this, being on that Sports Illustrated NFL Draft Bible, talking about women in sports. We got cool women here that are representing women in football, and I love it. And I'm going to keep pressing for that kind of stuff and doing volunteering for all the coaching opportunities I can get.
Olivia's good with all this stuff. She's given hard emojis and everything else. No, that's awesome. Anybody else with any questions? No other questions. I thought you might have had Craig Smith in some of your videos there. There Craig's turning his camera on now.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought he might have
I
been.
asked him to do the sprinting drills. He said no.
I wondered if you could even catch him. He was so fast. That's probably.
Yeah.
I can barely get out of bed these days, so I mean, I would be the wrong guy to do. Amanda, I was just going to ask you. I know that you work a lot with regards to field work and stuff like that. What about in the weight room? You work with a lot of football players. Do you get in the weight room and teach those guys, with those ground-based exercises to help them, get better and stronger and all that? And Olivia, at the same thing. Your group. Are you in the weight room as well, or do you get the opportunity to get into the Western weight room and stuff like that?
I am, yes, I actually do weight room stuff with my CFL athletes and my Rams players right now because they are return to play. So I'm in the room making them stronger. So we're working on strength. We're not doing maximal lifting, but we're trying to just get their CNS finely tuned because some of these guys are returning to camp and return to play. So I am working in the weight room. That would be a whole nother presentation. And I would love to come back and talk about that because that's a whole nother hour. But I super am because that's also where I shine is I hold the Olympic lifting records in my province. So I can teach those lifts, and that's pretty rare because we don't have a lot of people teaching those specific lifts. And I'm basically the only one in Saskatchewan that can do that right now. And I know in other provinces it is hard to learn those lifts and teach them when you don't know or you don't have any experience. So that's why they shy away from teaching them in certain areas, and that's what I've found with those types of lifts. If the athlete isn't comfortable with them, we do other things like that med ball toss, which is going to manipulate that velocity in different aspects. So we still try to work on form and function, strength, speed, a little bit of hypertrophy at the end, which is just a little gaining muscle mass and bodybuilding just to get their joints ready for the season.
Yeah, and just to comment on what our program does is we don't have, unfortunately, access to the training space that the varsity athletes get. We're not quite there yet, but instead we coordinate with our captains training times in the rec center at Western, and we get our girls in there doing some lifts. So we ensure that it's a part of our program.
Olivia, you're the quarterback. Now, do you have mobility? Can the quarterback run? How does that work with regards to what's going on?
Yeah, so with the contact flag version, because we don't have the padding, a quarterback can't run through the line from under center, but we can run through the line or around out of gun or out of snap. So yeah, we can. And I take pride in that because I'm a smaller quarterback. I'm about the same height as Amanda over there. So I have to kind of get around the line a lot of times to see my receivers. And usually I tell them, if you can't see me, expect a ball because it'll come out of nowhere. So that's usually how it works. And mobility is a big thing. So I was a track athlete. That was actually my main sport along with volleyball. So being able to apply those skills to football has been probably very rewarding because that's one of the sports where you can actually just take everything you've learned and apply it in different ways. So yeah.
I know that that old Ottawa GG quarterback at the bottom left of the screen. I know that he liked that throw of yours, and I thought it was pretty darn good too. A pretty good quick release, and it got out there pretty good.
The ball jumped right out of that hand. I noticed it right away. Pretty, yeah.
I wish I had better tape, but I would definitely have some good throws that I am proud of. So.
The tape was interesting because there was a lot of white on the ground.
Yeah. Our girls are resilient. When we hosted at Western, it was like minus 21 degrees, like the coldest day ever. Snow, played through it. It was a lot of fun. Great audience too. So we still just love it. It's just the whole culture.
Yeah, that's when we met to talk about the presentation. You said you guys are playing, doing a training camp in February. I was like, what? That's tough.
Yeah. You get used to it. I don't know. We practice at Western at 7 a.m. So it's like it's actually kind of warmer at that time. It's really weird in the January, February time. And you train. We train in it. So your body gets used to it. It's just a matter of like, when will hot hands sponsor us because we use them religiously. Like we live off of that. Like they're in our pockets at all times, but it's a lot.
I see a whole commercial, really, right? Like, you throwing that ball to your roommate, poof, she catches it, hot paws, right? Like I see it. Yeah.
You got one of the best business schools in the country there. I'm sure you got one of their students on your team that can hit them up and try and get some sort of a marketing thing going on.
This is why we're trying to get Brock into our league, because they have the huge sports business program there. So imagine some of the leaders coming in and running a program. That'd be so awesome.
No. Yeah, absolutely.
Very cool.
Well, I know Craig Smith has said this numerous times to the other presenters we've had on that, nobody takes a back seat to the, Canadian coaches. And I would say also both of you two ladies tonight did an amazing job with the information that you provided, the way you provided it. Again, Paul's putting this out on YouTube for other people to see later on. And I think, your own two brands, right? The ladies, the women's football and the OUA and Amanda with what you're doing in Saskatchewan, right? I said it was pretty cool. I was actually texting you that one night at the barbecue and I said, do you know Craig Smith? And you're like, of course I know Craig Smith, right? So like I started out by saying it's a small world, and I sure hope that both of you get more opportunities, and I hope that a little bit of getting to talk to us tonight helps as well. So all the best to both of you, and thanks for it. And Amanda, we'll be in touch because definitely we'll put something together for that other strength stuff. I think it's so important, right? As a high school coach in Central Ontario, we're lining the field, we're pumping up the balls, we're ordering the buses, we're fitting the equipment, we're drawing the playbooks, right? So to add yet another thing of trying to get into the weight room and do that safely, sometimes we don't even do it at all because, like you said, it's a risk. It's a risk to even enter that spot, right? So I think I think that's something definitely for sure. So
I've coached it. I've coached at UBC for a number of years. I've been in the CFL for 19, and obviously I've seen a ton of talks with regards to the game of football. And you two ladies, it's just a fantastic thing tonight. It was very, very fascinating. Both different topics, but I doubt that I'll ever be able to get into a position where I'm going to hire. But I'll tell you, both you ladies, you would certainly be high on my list with regards to hiring. And if I can ever help you, don't hesitate to use my name. I know a few people, so I mean, certainly do that. And I know both of you are on the right track for sure. And I appreciate you guys coming out here and presenting fantastic presentations. Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you. I really do appreciate that, to be honest, just because it's a struggle for women to get into the sport, and we're doing it, and it's awesome. So thank you for giving us a platform to speak tonight.
I tell you, Catherine Raish gave me a call, and I wondered, you're a lawyer, you want to get into football? And the big thing is passion, and you two have shown passion with regards to this. And we sat and, we ate smoked meat on St. Catharines and talked for 3.5 hours. And it was just so fascinating to hear her. I mean, amazingly intelligent, way smarter than I am. And, just to hear her talk and how she wanted to get, and look where she is now, so things are happening. There's no two ways about it. And I told her, I said, you know what, you just don't worry about what's happening, because there's going to be people that aren't going to be on your side. So just keep that laser focus and just keep on going.
Exactly.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
Yeah. Great stuff. It was really interesting tonight. Not to degrade the other presenters, but there was a lot of really interesting information. I think Gabe put it on a few minutes ago. I wish you'd have been around when I was in high school. I sure could have used your knowledge and your coaching abilities. So thanks a lot.
Exactly. Awesome. Thank you.
Okay, night all. I'm going to sign off here. So, take care.
Good
night,
everybody.
Bye, Paul.
Night.
Amanda, I did think of that question. I know Coach Brise was talking last week about sort of the training he does with quarterbacks and the velocity and stuff he still throws at. Are you a better athlete now than you were, like when you were really young?
Yes, 100%. I think just because as training has evolved, like I'm learning more as a coach, like because I'm attending lots of stuff like this. So I'm like, my training is peaking and I'm 33 years old. I know it doesn't look it, but I'm still getting better and I'm actually still getting faster, which is really amazing, especially for my sprints. I time like little intervals and my intervals are coming down and my Olympic lifts are looking way better. So I'm trying to still be an athlete in that aspect. And just with the better science behind training now, I'm able to use that in my own training. So I'm better athlete than I was when I was a kid, and better training, better coaches.
So you're faster than 4:75 now.
I would hope so. I need to time it again. So maybe you can come time me, because my intervals are getting like my 10 and my 20s are getting better. So
I've timed a few people.
Yeah.
This could be the beginning of a beautiful friendship here. You two, Craig, you're getting back into the game, and Amanda, who knows, right? You can
Yeah,
get
exactly.
We did the Rod Peterson show together. That was might have been the first year, I think, something November, something like that. So
and then Rod Peterson charity football game I played in.
Oh, hey, you should have stopped. You know, that was just a totally amazing thing. Like Claremont came out. I mean, there was just a lot of guys that came out. It was a charity event on Labor Day long weekend, and Amanda, you know, the two girls that were in Amazing Race Canada. Yeah. I'm getting old. I can't remember, but two great ladies, and you know, they came out and played, and Rob Bresciani, actually the old guy. I don't know if you guys remember him. He's a 50-year-old. He was the most valuable player of the game, but it was fantastic, and you should have seen. I call her Firecracker because that's what she reminds me of. Amanda's a firecracker. And you should have seen her on the field. It was great. It was such a great night. And the charity, was there something? Do you remember, Amanda? If there was something?
I can't remember what it was for.
Yeah,
I honestly can't remember.
Yeah, it was at Libel Field, which is a really good field that we have here in Regina, and yeah, it was so much fun. Unfortunately, last year, everything stopped. So I was looking so forward to going out there. It was a lot of fun.
Me too.
And Craig, on that note, you know what? There's been so many terrible things, but I think this again tonight is one of those things, right? Olivia's in London, Amanda's in Regina. You know, Paul's down in the States. You know, Jamie, he's in Southern Ontario. Ted's in Quebec, right? Gabe and I are Central Ontario, right? Some other guys and girls that were on the call, and then of course with Paul being able to put this out on YouTube, right? It's gonna continue, right? It's gonna get more views and stuff like that. So it's pretty cool. My wife
I'm
here
just
wants to jump
myself. I am in the middle of report cards and a new report card writing program. Otherwise, I would have watched this tonight, but I do intend to watch the YouTube video to see this. I am so excited to see both of you here sharing your knowledge and just moving women forward. And I commend you both for your dedication to what you love to do, in spite of any obstacles that have been chucked your way. So congratulations, and thank you for being part of this. I appreciate it.
Well, thank you for saying that. That's amazing.
Yeah, and those obstacles are not a few, so it's a lot to get to where we are today.
Yeah.
So it's definitely needs to be acknowledged.
Yes.
My wife and I are both teachers, and she belongs to the ETFO
Status of Women Committee,
and they have a status of women every year, right? And I've always sort of advocated that I'm a co-op teacher, so I've just recently had a girl signed as a heavy equipment mechanic apprentice, so she's going to now enter the trade fixing heavy equipment and stuff, right? And I think the barriers are very quickly, they're almost dominoes now. I find they're falling much quicker, right? It's happening, right? And it's pretty cool on that front. So yeah. Paul, do we want to say anything else on YouTube, or do we want to wind that one down?
We have one last question from YouTube. There's one coach wanted to know, Amanda, when you're first training a new athlete, what are your priorities?
Assessment. So I first watch them run naturally, and don't give them any instruction. So like I just make them kind of do our full warm up. So I see how long it kind of takes them before they fatigue, which is, if it's a new athlete, right away, because we have to get used to longer and longer warm-ups. And the second thing is I watch them run naturally, just from a 2-point stance, and then from a 3-point stance if they are interested in getting a 40 faster. because I want to see what I can fix. And from there, I can give them a benefit, like a analysis of where they're weak at and how we can fix that. And that can dictate the drills I put in to work with them. So, because each athlete's different. Like one athlete might be really good at their linear speed. Some might be good at agility where others might not be. So some people, I just give them a really good analysis right after practice. So we do a shorter condensed version, like 45 minutes, where I'm just asking them to do different drills to see where they're weak at.
Awesome. And just before we sign off, if you both want to give where people can get a hold of you on whether it's Instagram or Twitter or MySpace for Rick, whichever one he wants. But
you guys can find me on my website, amandaruller.com. You guys can find me on Twitter at Amanda Bollick. You guys can find me on Instagram at Amanda Ruller. You guys can find me on Twitch. I actually stream Madden and Call of Duty, amandaruller.tv. So yeah, come find me.
For me, you can find me on Twitter, more on the professional end at Ghosh, so OGOSHHSW, or you can find me also on Instagram with the similar handle. Definitely follow OWIFA or the OWIFA on Instagram, Twitter. We also have a YouTube saving a lot of this work as well, so that it's a resource for our coaches and athletes. So yeah.
Awesome. And I'll put all those links in the description of the video too. So people can try and follow along with all the stuff that you guys are doing. That's awesome. And I will sign out YouTube.